Many times in an animation project, you're going to want to be able to create a pause in animation. And Cinema 4D's default interpolation method of soft tries to create a smooth animation between keyframes that isn't conducive to making a pause. So what we're going to do here is a little exercise where we create a pause in animation and then go back and fix it manually using the F-curve manager. So I have here a simple cube animating from the negative x-axis to the positive x-axis. And so when I play the animation, you can see that it moves from the negative x to the positive x, and it's doing a standard default interpolation on the keyframes. Let's switch over to the animation layout so we can see the timeline in F-curve manager. I'll click on the layout button and switch to animation layout. Still the same application, we've just rearranged the palette so we can see things better. And you can see down in the timeline here, I'm looking at the cube and everything else. Now, I don't necessarily want to see all this other stuff, so I'm going to go to the View menu and go Show Animated. And that gets rid of all the extra stuff in the timeline here. So now that I have the timeline, I can see that my cube is moving from left to right as I scrub through the scene here. And what I want to do is create a pause at exactly the middle of the animation. So at the middle of the animation, in frame 45, my cube is at this point in space. And so what I need to do is create a keyframe at this point in time, because this is where I want it to pause. And so the way to do that is to hold down the Control key and click right at that point in time. Now that I've created the keyframe, I can say, where do I want that pause to start? And I want it to start probably around frame 30. So my pause is going to start here. That means my object has to get to this point faster, and that's what happens when I move the keyframe to the left. Now what I need to do is to control drag a copy of this. So if I hold down the Control key and drag a copy of that keyframe over to frame 50, now I have the exact same keyframe values at frame 30 and frame 50. You can see as I click through those keyframe values, nothing changes. Now when I hit play, you would expect that this cube would hit those two marks and pause in its animation, but it doesn't. Cinema 4D's default interpolation is going to create something called an overshoot and an undershoot, which creates a yo-yo-like effect. So when I hit play, you can see that there's a yo-yo move in the middle of the animation. It does not pause. So I'll stop playback here, and let's take a look at what the F-curves look like for this animation. With my mouse over the timeline, if I hit the spacebar, that will take me to the F-curve manager. Now I can't see the curves yet until I select the cube over here on the left-hand side. And I'm going to hit the letter H on the keyboard to frame up the curves. And you can see that the object is moving only on the x-axis, so I really only need to focus on the X curve right now. So if I twirl open the cube and select position X, I can see just the position X F-curve. Now I'm going to hit the letter H one more time to make sure that I've got everything framed up, and I do. So it may not be easy to see on the web interface at home, but there is actually something called an overshoot and an undershoot here. And that's caused by the default interpolation method. If I select this keyframe, you can see that the handles for it actually continue on up past the keyframe value. And if the handles for the second keyframe, they are down below and lead up into it. So this little hump right here that's created, and I'll zoom in on it, holding down the 2 key on the keyboard and dragging up, and then using the 1 key to pan up, this curve right here is an overshoot. It's gone past the value. This curve right here is an undershoot. It's coming up into the value. And so that overshoot and undershoot is what's causing the yo-yo. So we need to be able to flatten that out. And so there's a couple of ways to do that. We could use the clamp function, but I'd like to do it manually. I normally prefer to do things manually in Cinema 4D because I like to know exactly what it is that I've done. And I tend not to like functions and things that do things just like that with a snap. So in order to do this, let's click on the position track to get all the curves together. I'm going to hit H on the keyboard to frame everything up. And so I'm going to draw a rectangle. Oops. Undo. I accidentally clicked on that red line again, and that red line allows me to change the scale of the keyframes all at once. And so when you click on that, you can drag it and raise it up and down. I'm going to undo. So now I'm going to click any place other than that red line and drag a rectangle around those guys and select the keyframes in the middle. Now, over here, when I select keyframes in the Attribute Manager, I can now see the attributes for the selected keyframes. And there's a little button here, Auto Tangents. Auto Tangents is normally on for all keyframes, and that's what creates that actual rebounding effect that you see here. So if I turn this off, suddenly now I have access to input manual values. This left time and left value, right time and right value, these numbers tell me where my tangent handles are. So the time is left and right, the value is up and down. So if I put a 0 in the left value field, and I'll just type in 0 right here and hit enter, it zeroes out both the left value and right value. And look what happened to my curves down here. They got perfectly flat. Now this is the same effect that you get if you ran the clamp function. It's just that I did it manually, and I knew exactly what I did when I did it, and that's very important to me. Now when we hit play on the animation, you can see that the cube is now pausing right in the middle of its animation and taking off smoothly and then animating into a stop smoothly. Pauses like this are a really common thing in animation, and the F-curve manager makes it really easy to create them.